I've been asked by a customer to rebuild a worn out clamshell bucket. Part of the rebuild is going to be to redesign it as well, because I believe the initial design was badly flawed. And problem with these buckets is after a little bit of use they start to bend outwards and fall apart. This is a brand new bucket that my customer has bought. He's given it to me to take measurements off of, and as you can see, it's nice and shiny and everything's straight and not worn out. And this is the old bucket, and it looks a lot different. This bucket, I had to cut a couple of the pieces off because it was so ripped apart that the pins were all jammed inside, and there was no way to get it apart even using a sledgehammer. So we had to use a plasma cutter and just cut these pieces off. And it's actually this right here which is the weak spot in the whole design. You have the frame which attaches to this piece over here, and then that attaches to the machine. But you can see here that there's nice heavy gussets. There's 4 of them, and a pretty heavy plate here and down the sides, and it's pretty strong, this part. And then we get down to here, we can see they neck it down to this thin little joint, and then what happens is this pin is attached to here. Inside of here is a bronze bushing, and this pin is only about this long, and the bucket pivots. It rides on the bronze bushing as it strokes this way, and that's it's fine. But the problem is that the pin is a cantilever, and the center of force is about here, so it's always trying to tilt this. Because this joint is so skinny, after a while this starts to bend out. This piece, it bends out. Then the pin, which is firmly bolted to it, tends to dip down, and it wears the bronze bushing out on the bottom on this side and the top on this side, and eventually they just pound right out, and they'll bend so bad that the thing will fall apart. And this bucket, when I received it, had been essentially ripped apart. You can see the bend, the linkages from the cylinder that open and close the clam have been bent because this side was pulled off. It just makes a hell of a mess. So my plan to redesign this is to take this piece, which is currently about 3/4 of an inch wide, and make it 1.5 inches thick, so it'll stick out to about here. Weld this piece to it, and then add heavy gussets down, starting up here and coming all the way to the bottom of the plate. It'll be about here and here. So you'll have a plate that's twice as thick and gusseted right to the bottom, up from up on this frame. So it should make this virtually impossible to bend outwards. Never say impossible when it's attached to a machine, but much less likely to bend out than it currently does. My other plan is to eliminate the cantilevered pin and just put a solid pin right through from side to side and hold it in place with likely just a large set screw on either side. That'll hold the pin solid to this frame, and then it can still revolve on the original bronze bushings. So that's the plan. I've cut the, as I mentioned, I cut the bosses off here, and this is the frame after they've been cut off. So what I need to do now is bolt this down to the mill table and machine these till they clean up on both sides, make them the same height on both sides, and then take a measurement down. I have dimensions I've taken off the new bucket so that when I'm done and the new boss plate is welded on, I'll be able to bore it out so that it's the same distance from the top of the frame or from this surface to the center of the pinhole. That's the plan. So today I'm going to machine that down and then take some measurements, and then I have to draw the new boss plate in AutoCAD, and then I can send it off to the steel supplier and he can flame cut me blanks, and I'm going to leave extra material on them so that I can machine them so that where they meet here it'll be two machine surfaces, which will help to hold them. I'll be able to tack them in place, and it will position them more accurately before weld. And then after welding, I'm going to have to come up with some kind of a setup, likely on my rotary table, and bore. Essentially it'll be this piece on my milling machine, except upside down from what we see here. And I'm going to have to run my boring head in here and here, and then rotate that 180 degrees and run it in here and here, and hope that the two pinholes, which are about 30 inches apart, line up. So today I'm going to start doing that, and we'll see how it goes. Now this part's fairly heavy. I'm not sure what it weighs. I can pick it up, but it's not very convenient to try and lower it gently onto a milling machine table. So I've been using my gantry crane, which I think I showed in my video of my new shop. And I'll just maybe show it again. I've added a couple of things to my gantry crane since I built it. One is lights. The shop is not nearly as bright as my old shop, so I bought a couple of LED lights and decided to just attach them to the crane for now. As I'm the only guy working in here, I can just move the crane to wherever I'm working, and I have pretty good light then. Now, in order to get power to the crane, originally I just had an extension cord which I had to run around and plug in everywhere, and then I found on the master car a reel, and this is pretty nice reels actually. It's got about 50 feet of electrical or like extension cord on it, and it doesn't ratchet, it just freewheels, and then you attach it to the crane, and then as you move the crane down the shop, which I don't have anyone here to move it for me, so I'll just have to explain it. As you move the crane down the shop, the wire either pays in or pays out as it needs to, and the reel can swivel as the crane goes by, and it's worked quite well. In the future, I hope to get a electric hoist, and I'll be able to power it with that as well. So now I've set it on the mill roughly where I want it to be, and at a typical excuse me, weldment, it rocks. It's not flat. So I already tried this out, and I found I needed about 28 thou shim. So I can shim it on this corner, and it takes the rock out of it. Then I have to clamp it down, and then I can take my cuts along the top here. Now to clamp it down, I'm going to use I'm going to use a couple of bars clamping bars I made shortly after I bought this mill. And they're just made out of, had some leftover 1.5 by 1.5 cold rolled steel job I did. Not sure how well those show up, but what I did was I drilled the holes in them same distance apart as the T-slots, so I can use them across and clamp in any of the T-slots, which has proven quite handy. So level either. I'm going to put some brass under there. They're just brass shims I use in the forge on my large lathe, so I don't mark finished surfaces. The nice thing about them is they're soft and they'll just bend and conform whatever surface you have. Also allows me to go a little bit wider. The radius of the outer gusset a little bit more with this. Got a slight hump in the middle, and I don't want to flex it too much. I'm going to attempt to see if I can see how much this actually flexes. Putting a dial indicator in the middle of the part and touching it on the outside, close to the outside edge of the part. Just see how bad the deflection actually is. Okay, so that's loose. Now, tighten it up and zero it. Well, I've got about 20. We started out at 0. We've got about 22 thou, and I could continue to tighten this. It's starting to get harder, but it's definitely not solid. So I think I might have to back it off and put shims underneath, because I would like this to be flat when I'm done. I ran into a problem when I was trying to clamp this down earlier. I was trying to clamp closer to the center here and here, and not sure if it shows up on the camera that well, but the bottom of this is like this, bowed up in the middle. So when you clamp closer to the center, it wants to flex the part, and that's not what I want. I want to avoid the flex as much as I can, because after I machine it flat and release it, it will flex and go slightly out of flat at the ends. It's not really critical, because after I weld the boss plates on, I'm going to final bore them out, but I'd like to keep them as close as possible. So what I thought I would try to solve that problem is try and clamp as close to the ends as possible where it's touching the table. And one way to do that is to use a 1, 2, 3 block. That'll allow me to get in right tight to the edge. And then on top of that, I'm going to place a 2, 4, 6 block. And I just got these the other day. I bought them off eBay, and this is the first time I've had a chance to actually use them. And set that on top. And then I can put the bar across to extend the length of my clamp bolts. Okay, I'll put those close to the end of the 1, 2, 3 block. And then place my large clamping bar on. It's much less spongy. It's tightening up much quicker. So I think I've got it good enough. So that's how it looks, and we'll try that. I was going to put on my 3-inch face mill and take passes across here until I get it to clean up. pre-machine is now finished. Got the sides flat and same distance up from the table, and then I cut this chamfer for weld prep. The boss plate is going to sit on here. This will just allow a stronger weld. This was a mistake. I ran out of travel, so I will clean that off with an angle grinder afterwards. It's just a weld prep, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Anyways, both sides are done. The next step now is to draw up the boss plates. Knowing the dimension, the drop dimension from here to the table, I can now make them the correct height. And then I have to order the material for that. And also I have to make some jigs, welding jigs, which essentially are going to be, they'll be essentially like this piece here. And I need them to hold the plates the correct distance apart and in line. I have to make 2 of them. It's a fair amount of work just to set up to weld that boss plate on, but it's pretty critical that they be straight. And I believe there's 2 more buckets to rebuild after this one, so I can take the cost of those plates, or sorry, of the fixture, and spread it out over 3 buckets instead of just for 1. So it'll probably be at least a week or more till the material shows up, and at that point I'll have some more video of the bosses being pre-machined and also making the fixtures to hold the bosses apart. Anyways, we'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Bye.